Well, because of that, of course, we bookended the week with talk of leadership speculation in what should have been a great week for the government, ended very badly. And let's start with this where we ended, which was on asylum seekers. And this is how Julia Gillard explained her strategy.
Why are you going to persist with this now?
Because I believe Tony Abbott and every member of the Liberal Party and National Party should walk into the Parliament and have their vote recorded so that the pages of history can show that when they were called on to choose between this nation's interests in protecting our borders and their narrow political interest, they chose their narrow political interest.
She wanted every single coalition member's name to be recorded. Well, now, Mr Speaker, she's frightened that Labor members of this Parliament's names won't be recorded. Won't be recorded because she knows that some of them are not going to support the government's legislation.
Now, a lot of people in Parliament, a lot of people in the Labor Party found that particular strategy completely bewildering, Fran Kelly. What do you make of it?
Oh, they did, and they're still angry about it. Some of the ones I spoke to in recent days, and they're still angry about it. And because I think what's behind this all is we just heard the Prime Minister then say, you know, she wants to basically hang this around the neck of every individual House of Reps coalition person that they wouldn't support offshore processing. She's trying desperately to make Tony Abbott try and bear some public responsibility for the fact that, in their words, he's a wrecker, he's irresponsibly blocking government policy just to make political mileage, that is just, you know, wrecking the nation as he does this, all in a desperate effort to get power. That's what she's trying to do. But the fact is, they have been singularly unsuccessful in hanging anything around Tony Abbott's neck, and that's why I think the conversation that we now know, thanks to the leaker, went on in Cabinet the other night was all about. It wasn't about, as Julie Bishop saying there, that we now know some Labor Cabinet ministers support Nauru. They don't. What they were trying to do was run the strategies to say, well, if we somehow put Nauru into the solution as well, Tony Abbott won't be able to refuse it without looking like, you know, being laid bare, he's just blocking this for blocking's sake. They're desperately trying all the time to try and pin something on Tony Abbott, and he has been such a dominant opposition leader that they have just been unable to do that. And I think it's forcing them into bad strategies like that one.
I think that's absolutely right, Chris' point. But where Gillard is trying the big lie on this one is that her partners in this coalition are the Greens. It's not Tony Abbott. She's governing with the help of the Greens and the Independents. That forms this current Australian federal government. So she can't blame her government's failure on an opposition.
No, that's not right. I mean,
well, it is right.
Well, with the Tampa legislation, John Howard had Kim Beazley and Labor's support to get that through. I mean, that's right. What happens in Parliament.
Well,
you don't just work with your coalition partner necessarily.
You bring up Tampa because you may personally object to it.
No, I just remember that moment when Kim Beazley said...
That's how they would support it.
And Pierre's great tax legislation goes through.
But I don't think there is any similarity between the Tampa legislation and this legislation.
No, I'm just saying that it's not unheard of for governments to need opposition support to get legislation through.
But even so, it is inexplicable for Gillard to pursue this policy. Her great strength is to be able to say that everything her minority government has put up to Parliament has got through. And on the best possible case with this one, the legislation was going to be rejected by the Senate. So why put it to the reps, especially when the numbers were never securely there to do so?
And the issue for this was if this vote was going to be lost, and it hung on the vote of Tony Crook, and we'll come to him in just a moment, but if this vote was going to be lost, she really risked the possibility that some Labor members weren't going to turn up to this vote. There was at least one and maybe more who wouldn't show up, and then her leadership would have been in really dire straits.
But also, if, as you say, it was fait accompli, it was going to go down. It was going to go down in the Senate. It wasn't getting them anywhere except for that symbolic game I was just talking about with Abbott. But then why, on the Thursday night and that whole Thursday, did they look like a government making a decision in crisis on the run when they'd had weeks to sort this out?
And that's because they were waiting for Tony Crook, which, again, people should say...
But they knew it was going to go down in the Senate anyway. They must have had a backup policy position.